Because everything I just said is obvious to people in the Middle East. Some argue whether our interventions are for strategic reasons. In other words, we need oil, so we took it. But to the people living in the Middle East, it appears there's some giant power thousands of miles away playing God with their lives. And how would that make you feel? War and oil are two of the biggest rackets going. John F. Kennedy, Eisenhower, Congressman Ron Paul, General Smedley Butler have all warned us about this. In fact, Ron Paul, as seen here earlier, said, "He who controls the spice controls the universe." Wait a minute. Meanwhile, in Afghanistan, our supposedly just war, they have really gotten to appreciate the idea of freedom of speech. In Afghanistan, with the new freedom of speech, what you hear them chanting in the streets is "Death to America, death to America, death to America." And this has got our Republicans and Democrats in a frenzy, of course, because they want to send them weapons and teach them how to fight as quickly as possible. Which wouldn't be cool, considering they're chanting "Death to America." The other day, my wife was stopped outside of her house because we've got Chinese troops that patrol our neighborhood. And so she was stopped, and they pulled her out of the car, and they were patting her down. And so when I looked out my window, I was like, oh my God. So I ran out there and I was like, hey, stop. And then the troops turned their guns on me and I had to get on the ground. That sounds crazy, right? That is crazy. Because if there's Chinese troops in my neighborhood, I'd be up on top of my roof shooting them with my AR-15. If they were down at the deli, I'd be down there planting bombs and blowing them up. That's what I would do if Chinese troops were in my neighborhood. Matthew Ho was a former Marine who worked in the State Department, but he later resigned after working in Afghanistan. And the reason he said he resigned, he said, we're simply fueling the insurgency. He said he estimated that there were from 100 to 300 members of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. I would estimate that more people die in America of autoerotic asphyxiation than there are terrorists in Afghanistan. So who are we fighting? Are we fighting insurgents? What are they? You know, is this the Mujahideen, have we already talked about with Reagan? Reagan dedicated a space shuttle launch to the Mujahideen. I'm not recommending a foreign policy of pacifism. We should be ready to defend ourselves from any threat in any manner possible. But we are buying billion-dollar boats to stop a guy from putting a bomb in his underwear. I mean, you think about what is the war on terror? What is more likely to cause someone to put more bombs in their underwear? I would say more billion-dollar boats. Because they're never going to be like, hey guys, I'll meet you on the battlefield at 12 noon. I'll bring my rocks and my rusted AK, and you guys bring your laser-guided missiles. They're never going to do that. It's never going to happen. Side note that I go on sometimes when I talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but in the West Bank, there are people that are taking over, you know, Israel's kind of putting down roots into the West Bank. And, you know, you can debate that either way, but they always try to go back and forth and say, how do we solve these problems? How do we solve the problem in the West Bank? Well, the people in the West Bank aren't allowed to have guns. But if you're an Israeli, you can have a gun. You can have an automatic weapon, and they walk around with it. Now, there's certain land that they want. They want the land that's high on the hill. And if they walk up to a house that they want, what they'll do is they'll open up the water supply, and they'll take a crap in it. And so, and then the people don't have guns. This is why I love the Second Amendment, why I stand very strongly against you'll never take my gun. And the thing is so this happens, and then the people go, you know, and we hear all this stuff about how could we solve the Israeli-Palestinian, you know, conflict, and they're always like, oh, we're working on it, we're working on it. I have an idea. Now, it's a strange idea. It's crazy. But I'm thinking as you're about to go up and poop in a people's water supply, you say to yourself, maybe I don't need to poop in the water supply. And then you don't poop in their water supply. That would be a great way of not angering people against your cause. But the same thing holds true for the whole Middle East. And I know what you're saying, but we've identified it's not the Quran. So we've identified it's not the religion. So it's got to be something regional. So what is different about this region? And it's as she said, we've been in this region, we've been messing with these people, we've been doing all these things. They know we're propping up their dictators. We just talked about the Shah in Iran and how their life was a living hell when it was going good. Everything was going good with Mossadegh. If you look at pictures of Iran during the 50s, it looked like a town in the United States. It looked like that was the kind of thing that could have spread all throughout, but we didn't want that to spread all throughout. We wanted to stop that. Because if they grew like that, then they would take control of their own lives, and then we wouldn't have their resources for as cheap as we did. And this to me is one of the big, calamities that we have going on. We spend more money than the next 18 countries combined on our military. And we have so much trouble, it's like, oh, you're going to leave us defenseless. My God. How, with as much money as we spend, we could cut that by 80% and still whoop anybody in the world.
Hey, now we've equally, like...
Now she talked to you, when you left, she answered your question. But all right, we'll let you see. You're back now.
He left during my rants.
Oh, it was a call from Home Depot and like, I'm broke. That's the reason it took me.
Did you tell him you're talking to John J. Myers?
Oh,
really important. The guy owns a screen printing shop in Dallas. It's big time.